whole past week we've been focusing on Trayvon and the George Zimmerman trial, and the media kept asking over and over again, well, what would have happened if Trayvon was white? Would the same thing would have happened? Well, you know what? The mainstream media failed to remind you that that exact scenario did actually happen a few years ago when a black neighborhood watchman shot an unarmed white teen. It's the black George Zimmerman the media doesn't want you to know about. In April of 2009, Mr. Roderick Scott awoke at 3 a.m. to the sounds of three young men breaking into cars on his street. He called the police and went down the street to make sure the young men didn't flee before the police arrived. He shouted at them to freeze and told them that the police were coming soon. But that's when 17-year-old Christopher Servini rushed at Mr. Scott, uttering, "I'll get you," or "I'll get him." Now, Scott fired twice, killing the teenager. Now, the trial that followed was again a case of prosecutorial overreach as they tried to charge Mr. Scott with manslaughter. Fortunately for him, a jury of his peers agreed with him that he did only what was needed to protect himself. Now, afterward, the prosecutor opined, "I just hope it's not a message to this community that you have the right to shoot an unarmed 17-year-old kid for breaking into a car." Now, the problem with that is that Mr. Scott did not shoot young Christopher Servini for breaking into his car, but for attacking him. Now, there was no white uproar about the killing of a young white man by the hands of a black man with a hero complex. Al Sharpton and the NAACP and the Justice Department didn't show up to a rally. The trial was just treated as a tragic situation that a young man brought on himself by turning to violence. Now, the media picks and chooses what stories are going to make national headlines based on whatever the government's agenda is of the day. So George Zimmerman killing one boy was huge. We covered that for a year. But it's not a big deal that at least 400 people, including a chief of police, have been killed by the guns that were supplied during Fast and Furious. It's also not a big deal that the railroad serial killer was let go by police time and time again because of his illegal immigrant status. No, that's not a big deal because the Obama administration is really trying to push through this immigration reform. And immigration reform could be the very reason that it wasn't an important thing for the mainstream media to report about a 13-year-old girl who was kidnapped and gang raped by at least 10 men here recently in Austin. Our reporter is on the scene with that story.
We're here at the settlement home in Austin, Texas, where a 13-year-old girl allegedly escaped this facility, was offered a ride by some men that she did not know who took her to an apartment complex. And according to KENS San Antonio, it happened right here at the Avalon Palms apartment complex, where a 13-year-old girl was abducted, brought to this apartment complex, and allegedly raped multiple times by multiple attackers. As many as 10 men could have been involved in the incident, many of which are said to have filmed the incident on their cell phones. Now, after the alleged attack, the young girl was let go, was able to use one of the attacker's cell phones to phone a friend. That didn't work out, and the young lady actually ended up at the house of another woman who let her smoke crack in her residence. Now, at least some of the men alleged in the attack were illegal immigrants. So I bring this up because we've seen before illegal immigrants being let off of crimes because of their unique cultural heritage. So with the settlement home under investigation and 3 suspects already in custody, hopefully we can find justice for this little girl. I'm Jakari Jackson for the InfoWars Nightly News.
Now, coming up after the break, Gigi Ernetta will be speaking with Larry Elder, who will talk about the mainstream media's agenda and their use of the race card during the Zimmerman trial. And then stick around because I'll be back with this evening's News Blitz.